right, so we're going to be talking about rental properties. I got some new faces in here because I know y'all like talking about investing, and I know that's why a lot of y'all come to work for White Line, because we want to teach you how to invest. We look at properties all day, every day, and since we're looking at properties all day, every day, you will get to the point where you will be able to notice a good deal when you see one. Needless to say, there's a lot of technicalities when it comes to it because we are realtors and we got to make sure we act in our best interest. But guys, if you're in the investing world, there's wholesalers, you'll find deals, you'll trip over them, you can drive for dollars, whatever it is. But rental properties is one of those things that most people have a bad concept of. A lot of people see flipping and flipping houses. I'm gonna go flip a house. I'm gonna be a real estate investor. Guys, flipping houses is a job. Most people suck at it. I got to be honest with you, this morning on one of my flips, I just got the appraisal back. It came in $15,000 light. So I went from making 20 grand down to making 5 grand by the whip of a pencil. So you got to be careful when you're working on flips. And most people think rental properties, they just think, oh, rental properties suck. I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to be a slumlord. I don't want to do anything like this. But in my opinion, rental properties, owner finance, those two are the ways to go, because that is how you're going to truly build wealth. This is how you will build a portfolio that is real estate backed. However, I do want to talk about the pitfalls where most people screw up, why most people hate rentals, why everybody's got that uncle that goes, I used to have a rental property. That's the stupidest thing I ever did. I sold that thing. But you know, everybody's got that story. So we're going to learn a little bit today, kind of a broad overview. I'm not going to dive real deep into it because I mean, people have written books on this, guys. People have literally written books, and I've got about an hour. So I don't want to take up all your time, but I am going to touch on this as thoroughly as I possibly can. And the sexiest part about rental properties is the concept called BRRRR. And BRRRR is going to be one of those things I really hope I can teach y'all as we're going through this. Not BRRRR like I'm cold, but it is a rental strategy that I utilize a lot. And I've got an example of one that I'm working on right now that is incredibly awesome deal, and I'm going to show that with you and why it's going to be a great portfolio builder for me. So let's talk about rental property basics, guys. Y'all know the rental property basics. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, buy a house. Step 2, rent it to somebody for more than your mortgage payment. Okay? Step 3, make money. That is the basic thing about a rental. But to me, guys, that's not even the sexy part of how to do this, guys. The sexy part about how to do a rental does not come from necessarily the cash flow. Most people see rentals and they're like, oh, wow, you're making $200 a month. Isn't that great? I could do that. And you had to spend how much money? Guys, that's not why people do rentals. That's not why it's an investment. Yes, the cash flow is nice, but most people don't cash flow a whole lot on their rentals. Very seldom do I meet somebody that goes, man, I got $1,000 a month cash flow, or I got $5,000 a month cash flow on this rental deal that I have. Sometimes in the commercial space, you hear about that here and there, but very seldom do you have it in the single family residential, unless you just find something crazy. But like I said, it's seldom. So to me, the part that most people miss when they're talking about a rental, what most people are short-sighted on is you're not looking at the full length of what happens when you own a property. Guys, when you purchase a house for $150,000, right here on the side, we're going to purchase it for $150,000. Let's pretend our mortgage is $1,000 a month. We rent it out for $1,300 a month, and now we got cash flow. I put 200. Sorry, it's supposed to be 300 in there for $3,600 a year. So right there with that one property that I buy, I'm going to be making $3,600 a year. And a lot of people go, man, that's not worth me putting my money into. It's not worth my time. It's not worth the headache. But that's not how you make wealth with a rental property. What the wealth comes from is the amortization. For those of y'all that have been paying attention, when we talk about home loans, anything like that, this is where we're at. This is how the payment goes down. So as you're looking at this particular property right here, as you go along, as you make payments to this house, more and more money goes towards your principal. So why this is a wealth building tool is, in that example, I bought a $150,000 house, guys. My mortgage and interest will be about $600. If I got taxes and insurance, it'll be somewhere around $1,000, like I said. After that, I'm making $3,600 a year. That's fantastic, wonderful. But the way you get rich in this game is by the equity that you have in this property. So I ran this as if I did this right now on March 2021. And if you look forward to March of 2031, in 10 years time, I can't get my mouse to show over this, but on the far right-hand column over there where it says March of 2031, it says I paid my loan down to $95,860. Now, I did not pay that loan down. My renter did. I've got a renter that's been living in a house for 6 years. So in 6 years, he paid my mortgage down to 95,000, or 10 years, and the house is worth 150 when I bought it. He just made me $55,000 in 10 years. But what other people miss also is that the value of the house is also growing. So let's say the house is worth $200,000 in 10 years. He just made me $100,000 by paying off my rent. So in 10 years, I've got $100,000 in equity in this house. The next example on the next grid below that is what happens in 20 years. My renter has paid my house down to $58,000. So we're almost at $90,000 in equity at the original purchase price. If it went up to 200 or maybe 250, I could have $250,000 in this, or I could have $200,000 in this property in 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I picked 20 years is because this is what I do for my children. I buy some houses for my kids. When my kid's born, I went and bought him a house. I put a renter in it. So that way, in 18 years, there's $200,000 in equity in this house. When they get ready to go to school, should they decide to go to school, I'm going to sell that house and give them 200 grand. Go to school, be smart, do your thing. If they choose to go another route in life, I'm going to go trade school, I'm going to join the Army, whatever it is. But I've still got that property. And the joke is, I've made $3,600 a year every single year, quote unquote, saving for my child's education. The equity in your rental properties is where the magic comes from, guys. That is your wealth building creation tool. Okay. The problem that most people miss, or that most people have with rental properties, is it's just not that simple. It really isn't. I wish it was that black and white, but you know what? When you deal with rental properties, you're dealing with other people. And sometimes you're dealing with a lot of people. When you deal with a lot of people, you're probably going to have to evict some people. You're going to have problems with the rentals. It's going to break. The toilet's going to break. Something's going to happen that you got to go fix. You're going to have vacancies. What happens if somebody leaves and you can't rent it for a while? Yes, you will have to pay the mortgage. Now, all of a sudden, you got $1,000 expense and no money coming in. That is something you need to think about. Next thing is, what if they are late constantly? What if they're past due? What if we have, I mean, guys, there's 101 problems that can come with a rental, and that's why people have written books about it. And what most people forget when they're analyzing a property, they're looking at it, is they've already thought about, what if there's a toilet? What if there's this? But again, it's not that simple. There's so many things people forget about when they're analyzing and running numbers on a property. One of the things that I think is funny that a lot of people miss is, what about landlord utilities? Colin, what do you mean by that? Well, if you have a duplex and only one electrical meter, how are you going to split those deals? How are you going to split the electric? What if you only have one water meter? Do you have to pay the utilities? If so, which ones? We've all seen rentals out there like, you get free cable. Well, why? That's something that the landlord's going to have to pay for. Make sure you're thinking about that. Vacancy rates. I talked about that earlier, guys. You need to know how often places are vacant in your area. It's a really easy thing to look up. Just go search rentals in the MLS and just like in the area that you're wanting to buy a house, look it up, see what rentals are available, and then see how long they've been on the market. If all of them have been on the market for 10 days or less, you're probably going to have very low vacancy rate. If you see a lot of houses out there that have been on the market for 200 days, that means it's a very hard place to find rentals, and that might not be a good place to buy a rental. Capital expenditures. That is one of those fantastic words that makes me sound smart. Capital just means money. Expenditures means spending it. And in this particular example, whenever we say CapEx, that's what we're talking about, capital expenditure. But these are the big ticket items that could break or that you would have to replace. let's pretend your hot water heater explodes. I can tell you from experience, you're going to pay somewhere between $1,200 and $1,400 to have a plumber come replace it. All of a sudden, you have a $1,400 bill that you weren't considering or thinking about. HOAs, is your property in an HOA? If so, what do you have to pay for? What do you have to do if your tenants don't mow the yard and you get a fine for that? Repairs and maintenance, guys, that's the little ticky-tacky things. When they clog a toilet, when they burn out a fan, when they put a hole in the drywall, when they get their key stuck in the lock and break the lock off. There's 100 things that you have to think about on it. Rent increases, most people never think about this. Every time your lease ends, you have an opportunity to raise the rent. Are you thinking about that? Are you staying on top of that? Annual expense growth. Guys, annual expense growth means all of those things that I just said to you right there will be affected by inflation. So here's a perfect example. If you are currently a real estate investor, I can promise you, you have noticed the price of lumber all of a sudden. I had to go buy two, what were they? 4x6. They were 4x6s, and I think they were 10-foot long. Two 4x6s that were 10-foot long cedar boards. Okay, these are big boards, don't get me wrong. It was $128 for those two boards. It was insane. Are you prepared for that? Are you thinking about that on the long road? And I'm going to show you an example with that in just a minute. And last but not least is management fees. Most of the time when everybody complains about rental properties, they are complaining because they have to take the phone calls. They have to deal with the late people. They have to go fix the toilet. If you have a property manager in place, that will take care of itself. But are you thinking about this when you analyze the property? So from this point forward, guys, we're going to be talking about the numbers that you should be considering if you're looking at a rental property. The basics are simple. Buy it for this much, get a mortgage, rent it out. The rest of it's where the devil's in the details. So I'm going to give you the numbers that I use when I analyze a rental property. And I will show you exactly what one of my analysis looks like when I'm done. So the first one is landlord utilities. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I forgot adding in property value growth. Are you considering that your value of your property is going up? And should you decide to sell it, are you adding that cost in as well? So here's my numbers, guys. First one, landlord utilities. I can't give you a number on that, guys. I have no clue. I have one property that's a duplex that I pay for the gas on. Gas is pretty cheap because the only thing that runs on gas is the heaters. Is the HVAC, and HVAC, what, 3 months out of the year? So most of the time it's like a $3 bill, and then the rest of the time it's more, okay? But you need to analyze that, guys. I don't know what it is. Depends on how big your property is. Do you have irrigation? Are you paying for the water? Are we doing this? Do your due diligence. And the best way to do that, by the way, is before you buy the property, if you know you have a utility that you're going to pay for, you can ask the agent on the other end of this transaction to say, hey, look, I need to see an average of the utilities. They'll get it for you. I'm sure if you've done any kind of older houses, that's one of the things that a lot of people tend to ask on older houses is, you know, can I see the utilities? How efficient is this home? Status. That's an easy one to figure out. Next one is vacancy rates. My professional opinion is anywhere from 3 to 10%. But again, do your homework. If you think about it for a minute, and I use percentages, and you're going to see why I use percentages in just a little bit, but I do use percentages. If there's 12 months out of the year and your house is vacant for 1 month, that is 8.3% vacancy. So I tend to put in 8%. Most of my properties are not vacant that long, but I tend to average 8%. I'll say, let's pretend it's vacant for a month. By the way, guys, that's probably a good place to put it unless you know you can just turn them quickly. And by the way, we're talking long-term rentals here, not like Airbnb stuff. Capital expenditures. Every month, guys, the reason why I use percentages is this is the amount that I put aside every month to combat these problems. So every month I put aside 8% of the rent into a savings account waiting for the day that it goes vacant. Capital expenditures. Guys, I put aside 5 to 10% of the rent, depending on the house. How do I make this ascertain? Well, what does the roof look like? Is the roof a big giant piece of crap that I'm probably gonna have to replace in 5 years? I'm gonna bump that up to 10%. If I just got done rehabbing the property, I'm gonna put it at 5%, knowing that a lot of things in there are pretty fresh and new. But that's your surprise bill percentage, 5 to 10%. And that goes into the same savings account. HOAs, guys, I don't know the answer to HOA. Figure that one out. That's easy. Repairs and maintenance. Guys, 5 to 15% on this one. Now, why? Or how do I make that decision? Well, how old is the property? If the toilet's brand new or the toilet's about to fall apart. If you have those old shower heads in there, have the fans been in that unit for the past 20 years? Those little things right there, guys, that's a sliding scale as well. If you don't know, go high. But I'll show you some general numbers in just a minute. Rent increases. How much do I increase my rent every year? Anywhere from 2 to 10%, depending on where it's at. Why do I increase my rents 2 to 10% per year? Well, guys, because my expenses will go up. It's going to cost me more to buy you a new fan next year than it will this year. Even though my mortgage stays the same. I do have people argue with this. They're like, they understand the concept. They understand the basics. Your mortgage didn't go up. Why is my rent going up? You know why? Because the cost of the faucet you're about to break went up. The cost of me putting in a new window went up. The cost of me doing whatever it is went up. My taxes went up. Okay? Everything will go up. So your rent needs to go up as well. And I've got some good tips on how to fight them whenever they do the rents, especially when you take over, and we'll talk about that later. My annual expense growth, guys, somewhere between 1 and 5%. I try to keep that pretty much in line with inflation. I think inflation right now is 3.42 or something like that. So I do calculate that in. Management fee, guys, they're usually right around 10%. If I hire a property manager, they're going to charge me 10%. My property value growth, you're a realtor, figure that out, guys. You're a realtor, figure that out. Where's your house at? Is it on the south side, like south of 1604, out in the middle of nowhere? Those values aren't growing very quickly. Is it in Denver Heights? Dinwiddie? Yeah, your property's jumping like crazy. And that's an important number to know and to ascertain, because should you need to refinance for any reason, you need to know where you're at. Plus, it helps calculate your net worth. Lastly, is if I decide to sell this property, when I go to analyze it, guys, I'm going to be somewhere between 5 and 9%. Am I selling it? It's 5%. If I hire another realtor, 9%. If I just don't feel like selling it, 9 times out of 10, I just do it. And again, you're going to see why all those numbers come in. So the reason why I showed you this now, guys, is it's not as simple as taking your mortgage and subtracting that from the rent. You need to be setting these monies aside. You need to be considering rent increases over time. You need to be considering all of this. And I wanted this in a video so you could go back and look at this one more time before you go buy a rental, because that's what gets you in trouble. That's what gets everybody in trouble. If you have a property that's cash flowing $300 a month, simple cash flow, $300 a month, you're going to be in trouble. Because the minute the hot water heater goes out, you got to pay $1,200. There went 4 months of profit for you. And guess what will happen the next month? Something else will explode, almost guaranteed. The minute you run out of money is the minute you get hurt. Should you have rental properties with $300 a month, guys, just don't go spend $300 extra a month. Don't go buy a new car that costs $800 when you're paying $500. So be aware of that. So lastly is the BRRRR strategy. So when I do rentals, I don't go buy $150,000 houses. I do, but like not just straight up clean, ready to go. I want to BRRRR a property. So what does BRRRR stand for? BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Now, the reason why I do BRRRR strategy, the reason why I do this, guys, is because this can provide an infinite cash on cash return. Guys, infinite cash on cash returns. That means I am literally making money out of thin air. That's what that means. When I do a burn, if I do it properly, I can literally make money out of thin air. So let me explain what I mean by that. In our previous example, cash on cash return, this is what it would look like. I went to go buy that house for $150,000. $2,000, rent was $1,300. I'm cash flowing $300. I still messed that up. $3,600 a year. Life is good, right? But to buy that house for a non-owner occupied house, you tend to have to put 20% down. So I had to write a check, 30 grand. Yes, there's closing costs. I'm not going to get into all of that. But simple math here. So I had to write a check for 30 grand. Again, in a perfect world, I'm making 3,600. If you do the math on that, guys, that's a 12% cash on cash return. I put in 30 grand, I made 3,600 that year. Guys, that's phenomenal. Even as bad of a rental as that is, which I would probably never touch, I'm still making 12% cash on cash. The stock market barely averages 12%, but you have to be in it for like 30 years to do that. So it's still a good cash on cash return, but I want to show you what an infinite cash on cash return is. So this next slide, I think I'm going to have a lot of questions on this, is a property that I'm working on right this minute with this exact, this is the exact numbers, guys. This is 100% it. So this property is 1300 Northfleet. It is a duplex. I bought this duplex for $107,000. I got it from a wholesaler that included the wholesale fees. Everybody tracking with me? We're starting right here where it says purchase price on the left-hand side. I don't know why I can't get my mouse on me. My closing costs were $3,368. My total projected cost was 110 grand. I think when I'm done with this house, it's going to be $205,000 in value. The exterior of the house looked like crap. The roof was just terrible, but the inside really wasn't that bad. I think there's a lot of room for growth. On one side of this duplex, there's a 2-2 that has a renter in it. She was paying $700 a month. Before I bought this property, I wanted to see her rental paperwork. She was on a month-to-month rent. I don't like month-to-month rents. But she said she wanted to stay for a while, but wanted to continue month-to-month. I said, well, in that case, it's $800 a month. So I jumped her up to $800 a month. So the minute I walk into this house, I got to pay $110,000 for it. And I've got a renter paying me $800 a month that already lives there. She's happy, it's fine. The 4-2 side had her crackhead brother living in there that I made sure he was out before I got there. And he had like tried to wire a lot of stuff. The inside of that one was pretty rough. So I was going to have to rehab that. And I estimated it was going to take me 8 weeks to rehab it and 4 months to refinance it. Maybe 7, I'm not sure, depending on how I choose to refinance it. We'll get to that in a minute. So when I went to go buy this property, look at the acquisition section. I had to write a check for $21,400 to buy this property. I got this on a hard money loan. I had to put whatever that is, 10% down plus points plus whatever. It's $21,400. So I took on a loan for $85,000. Now, oh, there's my loan points. So yeah, so I had to write a check. Total check was $28,000 to purchase. That seems better. Okay, so the points on the loan, amortized over 0 years, just because it's a hard money loan. My interest rate on it's 9.5%. And it says that my monthly P&I is $677. That's not entirely correct because I actually put the rehab money on the hard money loan. So my actual loan is not $85,000. It's $125,000. I got 40 extra grand on top of that. So my actual P&I on this house is $920 something a month. But remember, I have somebody paying me $800 a month. So what I have on my plate right this minute is I need to write a check for $28,170 to close that house. And now I have a monthly obligation of $900 basically, and somebody's paying me $800. So my monthly obligation nets out to $100 a month, which is a sweet deal. We get to now, so that's the buy of BRRRR. That was me buying the house. The second phase of BRRRR is the rent. We need to, or rehab, excuse me, buy, rehab. So now I need to rehab this house. Now, because I'm a realtor, I went through and I did my due diligence. I looked at all the other houses in the neighborhood, saw what they were selling for. And yep, if you got to go look at that and how to run a CMA, go do that. And I thought that this house would be worth $205,000 to $215,000 after we're done. So when I'm done with this house and I go get a loan on it and it's worth $205,000. Oh wait, I think I did the math at 210, sorry. Yeah, I did the math at $210,000. If that's what the house works out to, and I can borrow 75 cents on the dollar. So I can take out a loan, but I'd have to put 25% down. That loan would be $158,000. Now, why would I go get another loan? Well, because hard money's expensive. I don't want to keep, and it's interest only. So I'm going to go get a new loan, pay off the hard money guys. Now look, guys, what I borrowed from him was $85,000 plus another $40,000. So I borrowed $125,000 for him, and I essentially put $25,000 down. So $125,000 from that I owe the guy, $125,000 down. That's $150,000. There's a little bit of wiggle room. I'm getting a loan for $158,000. So basically, I'm getting all of my money back. My $28,170, I'm putting that back in my pocket. I'm paying off what I owe the first guy, and I've got a new loan. Let's say it was $3,000 in closing costs. I even put the interest rate high at 6% because that's ridiculously high, but it still worked. My monthly P&I, principal and interest payment, is $947. Now, mind you, I've already got a lady paying me $800. So my new obligation is $147. Colin, it's not a real good deal, no, but I still have a fourth two that I have not rented out yet. I've got that 4.2 on the market to rent out for $1,300. And if you notice, the very bottom line in that left column is I now have zero cash out of my pocket left in this deal. So the minute that I have no money on the table, if the bank forecloses, if the world ends, a plane crashes on it, whatever happens, I will not lose anything because all my money's back in my pocket. That's the beauty of this. Now let's go to the very top part, the gray one, the gray bar at the very top. I'm assuming that I can rent that other side out for $1,300. I haven't done it yet, but let's just say $1,300 plus $800 is $2,100 in total expenses, or total income. When I look at my monthly expenses, there's a slash in here. One is for before I refinance it, one of it's for after I refinance it. So that actually goes up a little bit because I'm making a principal payment, not just interest only. That's where that difference comes from. So my monthly cash flow right now, before I refinance, it'll be almost $800 a month. But after I refinance it, it's going to drop down to $529. Where do those expense numbers come from? Well, look at those little charts down there, guys. You can see that I'm already calculating a 5% vacancy, 5% set aside for repairs, 5% set aside for capital expenditures. I'm on the low end for CapEx because I put a new roof on it, put a new hot water heater in it, I put a new bathtub, you know what I mean? I did a lot of different stuff to it, so I'm not worried about having to fix some of that stuff real quick. I've got my insurance in there, my P&I, property taxes, those are my total expenses. It's the same on the other one. So guys, even after I set aside all that money we were talking about, I'm still cash flowing $529 a month after I get this thing rented and refinanced. My pro forma cap rate, pro forma means like after it's all said and done basically, and the cap rate is your income over expenses. I don't really work with cap rates a lot, that's why I don't really care. Net operating income. So NOI, net operating income. Again, that's not what I want to talk about right now, because my net operating income is all the income that I make minus all my expenses. That's what it'll be, depending on the year. The first year, $800, it'll be $17,000 over the price of the loan. I can't remember how that calculated what I did in that one, but total cash needed, that one you saw right there. Cash on cash, return on investment. That's the brilliant part. Is at the beginning, before I refinance it, I'm making 34% on my money per year. That's triple what the stock market averages. Once I refinance and I take all of my money out, it becomes an infinite return. Guys, that right there is the magic. I am now making money out of thin air. I'm making $529 a month with zero cash out of pocket. That breaks the calculation and makes it infinite. That's what I love. So some other sexy parts about this thing that I think are amazing. The total initial equity says 119. That's not right, because it's assuming I have 215, but it's not true. The gross rent multiplier, guys, that's the value of the house divided by income. So that's 4.25. Income to expense ratio based on the 2% rule. I'm just below the 2% rule. Basically, whatever you make in rent, just assume 50% of it's going to go away. Just that's, and then it turns it, if you invert that, it becomes 2%. The ARV based on cap rate, I didn't put in there. The debt coverage ratio. The debt coverage ratio is how many times my debt, the ratio is my rent coming in. So when you go to refinance it, that's something they're going to look at. So I'm going to be able to say, hey, look, I'm at a 1.5% debt coverage ratio. When you talk to your refinance people, that's what they're going to want to know. And you'll be able to show them when you do all this math. But here's the cool part. So let's look at that graph down at the bottom, guys. I assumed that my expenses would grow by 1% a year, probably a little bit light. I probably should increase that. I said that I was going to move my rents up by 1.5% a year. Again, that's probably really light. I'm probably going to do more than that. And I assume my property value is going to grow by 3% a year. So I bought that house 2 months ago. I'm just finished up right at the beginning of the year. So in 10 years, guys, if the value of that property keeps going up by 3%, look at that 10-year column. My rents go up, everything happens. I'm still making $28,000 a year on that property. I'm spending $19,000. I made $9,200 a month or a year on that property. Cool. That's not real sexy in 10 years. But if you go down a little bit where it says profit if sold, in 10 years, I'll make $200,000 if I sell it. My little girl's 7 right now. If I need to sell this in 10 years so she can go to college, I got $200,000 paid for. And by the way, I made $9,200 a year the entire ride. So that's kind of the nice thing. If I wait 20 years or if I wait 30 years, guys, that's the BRRRR strategy in a nutshell. So before I continue rambling, does anybody have any questions on those 2 slides right there? Make sure to unmute yourself if you got any questions. Damn, I'm good. I am that good. Well then, so guys, one more time, the reason why I choose to do the BRRRR strategy is because of the magic line on the left-hand column at the very bottom. Total cash invested is 0. I think if there's one tip y'all can take away from today, you hear the term in real estate investing is creative financing. Can we get creative about this? Can we do creative financing? I don't think the creative financing is how you buy the property. It can be, don't get me wrong. But I think the real creative part about this is what can you do to force the equity into the property so you can get your money out? If I had to save up $30,000 every time I wanted to buy a rental property, that's going to hurt. And here's the thing, guys. I paid $30,000 for this property. Let's say in 6 months I get my $30,000 out. What do you think I'm going to do in month 7? I'm going to go spend that $30,000 again. I'm going to go find me another one of these. I'm already looking for it. And as soon as I get another one of these, guess what? Now I went from $529 to $1,000. What does that work out to? $1,058. So in 1 year, I've added $1,058 to my household income after thinking about vacancies, repairs, new roofs, everything. If I can do that 3 times, if I can do that over 3 years, now I'm making $3,500 a month in 3 years, passively, with no stress whatsoever, because I've got money set aside in case something breaks. I've got, I don't have property management in here because I do have some people that manage for me. I could put that in there and still make money. But let me ask you guys, if you could take $30,000 that you have in your IRA right now and over the next 3 years create $3,500 a month of income, I mean, you wouldn't be a part-time realtor anymore. You quit. I don't know how much y'all make, but a lot of people, man, $3,000 a month, that'll cover your mortgage. I mean, unless you just got a nice house, you know, you don't have to pay your own mortgage anymore. But the trick, guys, you got to keep your expenses low. So, all right, well, I guess that's all I got. I was going to go through some more strategies and stuff, but I see I'm already at that 45-minute mark, so I'm not really going to hit that up too much because I don't want to keep y'all. I like to keep it under an hour. Plus, I got to go meet with an investor here in a little bit. So no questions. James, what's up?
Nothing, everything's good, man.
Yeah?
Yep.
Chris, any question? Vanessa, any question? Anybody?
No questions, at least not yet.
No, everything's good on my end as well.
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
Everything was good on my end.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, guys, I mean, that's kind of the basics of it. If you want me to dive deeper into it, somebody send me a text because I'm going to be doing the investment series here for a little bit. Today's just kind of 101, what the difference between a regular rental and a BRRRR is and what it looks like. And then that's kind of a real life example there. I'm trying to keep them short, keep them exciting. So that's all I got for the day, guys. I'll go over strategy.
Appreciate you, Colin.
Right, y'all be good. Go out there, go slay it, go kick it, kick some butt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, bye.
Bye.